Hi, welcome to Daily Work Remote Strategies. Today, it's me, Senia Maymin, speaking to you about change. I care a lot about change. It's the reason why I named my executive coaching company Silicon Valley Change Executive Coaching. I really want to focus on this, on the change, on behavior change. How can people change? What should people do to change? And that's what today is about. So like I said, in order to make this interactive, let's make this practical. So for you who is here on this webinar, please write down into the comments to me and I'll read them off anonymously. I won't say, oh, Joe is working on this or Mary's working on this. I'll read them off anonymously. What is a change you want to make? So a direction you want to go to. What is a change you want to make? I'll give you examples. It can be as common and as important as changing my eating habits, changing my exercise routine. It can be as meaningful as changing how I speak with those people closest to me, my kids or my spouse. It can be as pragmatic as changing something about work, whether it's the time of day you work, what process you use to work, how you get more things done. What do you want to change? So let me know, so we're working on a specific thing today. What do you, if changed, would improve this thing and maybe other things in your life? So we're getting a few of your comments, and we will really go through the webinar focused on those. Some of you are saying, as I expected, and it's top of my list right now too, is exercise habits. Some of you are saying sleep patterns. Some of you are saying some work habits. What work habits? Can you give me a little more on that? What kinds of work habits? Okay, so we're going to get started and we'll incorporate those in. I care about change. I think it's important. I also think it's doable. So a lot of people will say, well, change here, there. How can you actually make change? So in order to do that, I'm going to start with an example that most of us have done at some point in our lives. If you are about to change something, to start something new, what is the first thing that you should be aware of? Let's all take the same example just for these purposes. And again, it can be something as meaningful as being kinder to your kids. That's something I work on from time to time. I really do. I mean it. It can be something like reaching out to your parents or grandparents more often. It can be having the difficult conversation at work and doing that more often. But let's stay with exercise. If you want to change how much exercise you're getting and you want more exercise, let's say more cardio or more strength, so you want something. Let's all focus on the same example. So let's say you want more strength exercise. What's the first thing you should do? So I actually love to hear your ideas so that we know we're all starting from the same place. Awesome. Here are some comments coming in. Have clarity on what does success look like. If I want to change this, what will success look like? Some of you are saying figure out the first next step. That's a song in the most recent Frozen 2 that the kids and I watched about a half year ago. It's something like the next best thing, but the first next step. Okay, so a few things on either what's the big goal, what does success look like, or what should I do early on? Awesome. I will suggest that there is one other thing, and thank you for the comments on the things you want to change. We'll get to those in just a moment. I will suggest there's one other thing that you might consider. Let's say I want to change on more strength conditioning, whether it's body weight conditioning or with weights. I might want to do a check-in of where am I? What's my baseline? Even if you're thinking about the change as driving, going from point A to point B, the couple of comments that we've gotten here are get clarity around point B and also figure out what's the first step of that driving direction from point A to point B. I would also say, let's look at where you are. And I say this, and some of you may have heard me say this before. Sometimes I think I'm doing some strength exercise. I might do 5 push-ups a day, I think, or I might do 25 one day. But if I really look at my calendar and where I've marked it down, I really did 5 push-ups twice last week. I mean, that's a low baseline, but it gives me resonance. It gives me authenticity with what my baseline really is. And same with being kind to your kids, or same with having difficult conversations at work. What is your baseline? How often are you taking those risks to have those conversations? So let's get our baseline together. And then we're going to look at both the small steps and the large steps. So this brings us to the reason I wanted to have this webinar with you all today, which is a specific model on how to make change. So I'm gonna have a sip of water and encourage you to do the same. There is a researcher named James Prochaska who studied change for a long time with his colleagues. And specifically, he studied a very bad change. So something that we actually, it's not something that we do as much these days. He studied how do people stop smoking. And he had over 30,000 people in this study of how do people stop smoking. And the weird thing about smoking, and this may sound familiar about any kind of change that we want to do. The weird thing about smoking is people would sometimes get close to stopping, to quitting smoking, and then they'd quit. And let's say they even quit for a week and then they'd start again. Or they'd quit for a month and then they'd start again. So Prochaska looked at this and said, what is going on? What is going on about our attitude towards change, or making change? Why aren't we just really firm? I want to do more strength conditioning. Why don't I do it? Why don't I put it on my calendar for 30 minutes each day and just do it starting from today? So Prochaska looked at what is our mental setup and how do we get into something. And what was surprising to me when I learned about this model, so I'll first describe it and then I'll show you a visual. What was surprising to me when I learned about the Prochaska model of change is their action, so that step of actually quitting smoking or that step of starting the strength training, that is the fourth step in this cycle. Before action, there are 3 other steps. Now I'll name them and they may sound a little funny. There's pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, then action, and then maintenance and termination. We may never get to termination. So for example, I'll just be honest with you. I think for me, exercise is always going to be maintenance. I'm always going to need to say, okay, Senia, let's go. Okay, it's on the calendar, let's go. For some people, exercise is at termination. They don't think about it. They do it like brushing your teeth. I can safely say, including being vulnerable with you all here, that for me, brushing my teeth is at termination. I don't need to remind myself and to have a little argument like a devil and angel on 2 sides of my head. Senia, are you going to brush your teeth or are you not? So there are some things that we all already do that is termination, and some things that are maintenance. So those are the last 2 stages. Then there's action. That's actually doing in this example, strengths conditioning. So what are these precursors? Now you probably understand the step right before action. That step is called preparation. That makes sense. That's putting the sneakers by the door if you're gonna go running tomorrow. That's getting the right equipment. Maybe your sneakers are 12 years old. If you're gonna go running, getting those new equipment. That's preparation. That's when you're already sure that you're gonna do it, or pretty sure, and then that's preparation. So now let's work backwards, and this is the funny part. There's contemplation. So I have to say, for me, it's hilarious. When I first learned about this, I thought contemplation, so thinking about something without even planning to do it, this is more of a passive phase. And we all have contemplation about things we want to change. Some of us are quicker to switch from contemplation to preparation to action. Some that can be weeks, months, maybe even years long to get. So contemplation, what is that? That is thinking about the thing that is on your mind. It is considering, do I want to, do I not? If I were to, what might I do? So it's even just thinking, do I want to do it? And now let's move to the earliest stage, and then I'll show you why this jumble is so funny for me, because the visual of these 6 stages is not quite linear. So the earliest stage is pre-contemplation. Again, we have pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, then either maintaining that or termination, meaning you've got it. Pre-contemplation. This is going to sound weird to you, likely. It did to me. Pre-contemplation is when you don't even know you need to make the change. Pre-contemplation is when you're not even aware that you have a muscle strength problem, or you have an overweight problem, or you have a drinking problem, God forbid, but you're not aware, but other people around you may be aware. So that's pre-contemplation. So now we've got pre-contemplation where you're not even aware, but other things, there might be hints in the environment. So now let's look at this model that I've been promising you. And it's a little funny. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen. Here comes our model. Okay, this is the Prochaska model of change, those 6 phases that I just discussed. Let me get to it. If you do not see this, please let me know in the Q&A or in the chat. You should be able to see this now. So what I've done, by the way, if you want to find it, I've gone to Google Images and looked for Prochaska spiral. I can also drop this link in the chat. This is the model. So let's look at this and let's look at how strange this is and what the strangeness is. This is the phases that I described: pre-contemplation, contemplation. Notice that spiral, going to preparation, going to action, going to maintenance, going to termination. Why did Prochaska, after all his research, envision this as a spiral? Because you might fall from one step back to the previous, and that's normal. So you might fall from action back down to pre-contemplation even, like, should I even exercise? I don't even know, exercise, huh? Or you might fall from action to contemplation. Should I not exercise? You might even go from termination to maintenance, that something is hard for you to do again. I know this looks a little strange and fuzzy, but I'll also tell you the specific question Prochaska asked to figure out what phase we're all in. So here it is, it's a spiral. And the information that I get from this, and I'd love to know if you see something different, the information I get from this spiral is we might fall back in the spiral. And that doesn't mean anything. We can start right back up and go again. So that's the Prochaska spiral and the Prochaska model of change. So now I told you that there's a question that you can ask yourself to find out where on that model you are. And let me step back to 30,000 feet again. The goal of this is, how can you make change? So how does it help that I've shown you a model of a spiral of change? How does it help that I've talked to you about getting awareness of where you are, your baseline, then starting to make those steps? Also what one person mentioned, which is looking for a clear goal. What does success look like? How does this help, this spirally model, and then thinking about moving from here to there? I think it gives us a little bit of a, it's something I really recommend in these coronavirus times, but it gives us a little bit of slack. It gives us a little bit of, oh, okay, I get it. I get why I didn't exercise 7 days a week or even 5 days a week. I get it, and I'm going to start that spiral again. So for me, this spiral is actually hopeful. I can also see that it could be a little bit, why is this happening? But I find it hopeful. So now let's get to the question. So I've talked about how there are these 6 stages and not linear, it's in that spiral. So before we get to action, how can you know where you are on the thing that you want to change to? Please keep in mind that thing that you said at the beginning of the call that you want to make a change to. I'll read off just a handful of them. Somebody said, change my sleep patterns. Somebody said, be more calm. That's related to my be more kind. And somebody said, create a better communication method to stay in touch with clients. So those are some very specific, just a few. Here's the question. When will you be doing your better sleep patterns? So if you tell me I'm going to start tomorrow, that's action. If you tell me I'm going to start in about a week, that's preparation. If you tell me I'm thinking about starting in the next 6 months, that's contemplation. You're thinking about it. It's in your head. And if you say, I don't know, sleep patterns, I don't know. That's pre-contemplation. Others may be noticing it about you, but you may not be yet yourself. So that is really the model. And I'm going to leave you with one delightful story that I read in the Prochaska book, which is Changing for Good. Again, the model is this spiral model. I'll show it again. I actually noticed some people jumped on this call just even in the past few minutes. So I'll show the model one more time. This is the model. You're starting when you don't even know pre-contemplation, going to contemplation, preparing, taking action, and either ending in maintenance where you maintain that action, or you're going to termination where that action is a habit. It's easy. So we've got that model. And within that model, I just encourage you to play. Just think about, what does my contemplation look like for getting better sleep patterns? What would my preparation look like for that? Would I move all the computers and electronics out of my bedroom? What would preparation look like for that? How do I know if I'm ready to start the action today? So here's a story. I think it's so delightful. So in addition to studying smoking, he also studied alcohol. And this one person, it's such a moving story to me. Prochaska went into one person's office, and this is somebody who had quit alcohol. And the person said, I am so good with this. I've completely quit drinking. It's so good. In fact, check this out, he says to Prochaska. And he pulls out his drawer in his office, mind you. He pulls out his drawer, and it's an empty bottle of some kind of alcohol. So it's an empty bottle. And he says, look, this is how good I am. This is how sure I am that I'm at the maintenance or termination phase. I do not need this. I even have this bottle to remind me that I don't need it. And Prochaska walked out of that office thinking to himself, no. And he said this, I believe he said it to the person, but he thought, no, that's not, you don't need that reminder. That reminder doesn't help you with anything other than keeping the memory of that thing so that it's an easier trigger. It's a more frequent reminder of the trigger of alcohol. So he walked out of that office thinking, this is not right. And sure enough, that person went back to drinking. Unfortunately, I don't know if that person ever then quit drinking. I don't know. So I know I'm ending this a little bit on a downer, but I'm just saying, even if you're doing this, just keep thinking about maintenance. Keep thinking about termination. Keep having that goal. So tell me, given all this, where are you?